Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Is there really a slow erosion of good manners? Find out on today's Advanced Radio. Hi there, friends. Welcome to Advanced Radio, your window on the world. We're so happy you could join us on the second day of 2009. My name is Liz Archer, and we're back for day 2 of the Society article entitled The New Good Manners. Well, with me to discuss this fascinating article are my 2 panelists from yesterday, Brandon and Winnie. Hello, guys.
Hi, great to be back.
Well, I'm glad you 2 could join me again here for day 2 of this article. But before we jump in, let's do a quick review of yesterday's lesson. What did we talk about, Brandon?
Well, Liz, yesterday we talked about how the line is blurring, and that means that the line is blurring between what is right and what is wrong as far as etiquette goes in the workplace. And we also discussed about the boon in bad manners. Because of all of the bad manners, there has been a rise in the etiquette business, and we talked about how that job security is in place for those who are in the etiquette business because they have so much work to do.
Thank you, Brandon. And what else did we talk about, Winnie?
Well, we also talked about how this is a welcome trend, meaning more and more companies, not just a few people, but companies are requesting this kind of service because there's so much bad manners out there. And so several companies, some in California and elsewhere, they are giving advice to workers on how to eat using table manners, how to dress appropriately, and their goal really is to establish ground rules or the basic rules for how employees should behave at work.
Okay, thank you, Winnie. Well, friends, if you have your January 2009 issue of Advanced Magazine, please turn to page 9. We're on the first column, line 27. And here's Steve with the first part of today's reading.
Generational differences among workers also can create conflict. What may be acceptable to a younger employee, such as text messaging a friend while at work, may not be acceptable to a baby boomer, Olson Buchanan said. Tiffany Smith, owner of an etiquette consulting business, helps employers and their workers understand how to treat each other with respect. Etiquette is not just about manners, it's about principles to help people build stronger relationships, said Smith, who trained at the Emily Post Institute. Her clients include schools, businesses, and individuals. Simple issues, such as wearing the appropriate clothing, can dictate how a person is perceived by the public and co-workers, she said. Well-intentioned efforts, such as Casual Friday, have backfired in some offices where employees push the limits of good taste. It is time for some employers to reinforce the dress code, Smith said.
Thank you, Steve, for the reading. Okay, so we begin with a statement. Generational differences among workers also can create conflict. Now, what are generational differences, Brandon?
Well, there's a good example of generational differences is if you think about your grandparents and you think about their children, and there's a generational difference there. There's a gap there between the age and the things that they do, and then another generation would be between me and my parents. There's a generational gap there or difference.
Okay, and each generation would have their own set of values, what they think is acceptable, what they think is unacceptable, what is cool, what is not. Right. What is outdated, what is so stupid. Every generation would define things differently. And when you would put these informations together between grandparents, parents, and grandkids, you'll find that there are differences. So, generational differences. And then we have an example here of what a general difference might look like. What is it, Winnie?
That's right. So in this paragraph, they're talking about the generational difference between a baby boomer and maybe someone who was born within the last several decades. And when we say baby boomer, we're referring to those people who were born right after the Second World War. And so those people in that generation would currently, in 2009, be around maybe 50 or 60 years old.
Mm-hmm. So we see that maybe somebody who's young, somebody who was born within the last 30 years, for example,
Right.
something like text messaging, as we see on line 29, text messaging to a friend while at work, that's okay. But then for somebody, say, from the baby boomer generation, that's unacceptable. Well, we have a statement made by Olson Buchanan following that paragraph. And again, who is Olson Buchanan?
Olson Buchanan is a business management professor.
All right. And so Professor Olson Buchanan, she's made this observation that younger workers don't think there's anything wrong with text messaging while at work, but that's not the case with those from the older generation. Now, I have to ask you guys, what do you guys think about text messaging friends while at work?
Well, I think if it's limited, then maybe it would be okay. But obviously, if it's interfering with your work, then you shouldn't be doing that. And also, if it's not really necessary, you shouldn't do it. So I think if it's necessary and it's for a limited amount of time, then that would be okay.
So, for example, if you get a text message, "Hey, what are you doing now?"
Right, that's not necessary.
That's not necessary. But what if you get something like, "I would not be able to meet you as we've planned.
Right.
Can we, reschedule?" Then
Sure.
That's probably okay. What do you think, Winnie?
Yeah, I think it's just important for the worker or whoever's getting a text message to show discretion, meaning they know what's appropriate and what's not. Because a text message like that, like, what are you doing now? What are you eating for lunch? What are you wearing today? That's really not necessary. And for a person to have good common sense, really, to figure out, okay, I don't need to respond to this right now. And I think that sense is what they're talking about in this article, knowing what's appropriate and what's not.
I think personally, it's interesting that though I don't seem to have a problem with text messaging somebody while I'm at work. Well, provided that it's a short message. That's the other thing. It has to be short, and that I don't take too much of my time to get the message sent out. Well, then then I would have to say, it's fine. But then I would think it's inappropriate, okay, if these very same people whom I'm text messaging to, let's say these very same people would come to my office to come see me and deliver that very same message, whatever it is that we're talking about. I would think that's inappropriate. And I find myself to be contradicting then, because it's okay for me to be messaging them, but it's not okay for them to be seeing me in person. So I think maybe it's because perhaps, there's also the issue of, am I bothering others?
Right.
Because it's one thing to get my message sent out in the privacy of my cubicle or my own little office space. It's not going to affect the next person sitting next door.
Right.
But when it comes to maybe my friend Joe coming by and say, "Hey, so what do you think about meeting after work for, for dinner or whatever?" Then I'm thinking, my conversation with Joe will be overheard by my next door neighbors and everyone else in the office.
And your boss.
And my boss, yes, and everybody else. And so then that would probably be inappropriate. So I guess the rule for myself personally, okay, this is my personal rule. Number one, don't waste company time doing personal things. And number two, if it's unavoidable that some personal things need to be taken care of during your work time, then make sure it doesn't disrupt other people's work, and especially your own work. All right. I guess the bottom line would be we need to respect our boss. After all, our boss is paying us, and we have to respect our coworkers because they're trying to get their work done. And speaking of respect, we have another comment made in the next paragraph about this.
That's right. Tiffany Smith, who is an owner of an etiquette consulting business, says that she helps employers and their workers understand how to treat each other with respect. And that's exactly what you were talking about, Liz. This issue of respect, not only for maybe those immediately around you, but for everybody else in the office.
That's right. So now we have the owner of an etiquette consulting business giving us her perspective. Now, what else does she say?
she says that etiquette is not just about manners, but it's about principles to help people build stronger relationships. And so here again, she's talking about, it's not only about, don't text message people, but it's also about forming strong relationships with other coworkers.
Interesting. I think sometimes people have this misconception or this misunderstanding. They might get confused that when it comes to minding your manners, about being polite, it's all about being civilized and showing that, you have class, and that a rude person would be regarded as low class. And people generally, we don't want to be thought of as being low class,
Right.
And that's why we need to show good manners, because you don't want people to think ill of you, But Miss Smith, she doesn't hold this view. She said it's all about building good social relationships through acts of respect, as we said earlier, about good treatment towards one another. Now, Miss Smith, what is her professional background? How is it that she can make such claims?
Miss Smith trained at the Emily Post Institute. I'm just going to read the rest of that. Her clients include schools, businesses, individuals. Simple issues such as wearing appropriate clothing can dictate how a person is perceived by the public and coworkers. Now, she says all this because the Emily Post Institute is an organization that was created in 1946 by a woman, a writer named Emily Post, who wrote for a very popular newspaper column on exactly this topic, etiquette, how to behave in all different kind of situations. And so she was trained there, and now she goes around and gives advice on how to dress appropriately and how to conduct yourself in public settings.
Okay, so she definitely sounds very experienced when it comes to training people, and of all institutes, the Emily Post Institute. She's helped schools and businesses, so she's helped, large group settings, but she's also helped individuals. We've mentioned before this one-on-one coaching. We talked about that yesterday, where you have that direct impact or effect with that one person who wants to learn from you. She's certainly helped a lot of people with different aspects of manners and being appropriate in social settings, and she's taught a wide variety of subjects. And she really believes that appropriate clothing can dictate, as we see on line 42, how a person is perceived. Now, this word perceived, what does that mean?
Perceive means how others may receive you or how other people think of you. And so in this case, she is saying that what you wear can make a big difference because other people will form an opinion based on how you look.
Okay, what do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree, think this is very, very true? Or what?
I do think it's true because you look at a person and how they take care of themselves. I think it can tell you a little bit about that person, kind of what their outlook is on life, what they maybe care about. It's not, a definite thing, but it definitely gives off certain type of view about things when you dress a certain way.
And going back to that issue of respect, now if I'm going to a meeting, let's say with a client, if they come in shorts and T-shirts, I might think that maybe they don't respect me as much if they're very casual, rather than if they came in a full suit, it would make me want to respect them as well. So there is definitely that dynamic.
Well, I've heard some people say, people who really love their casual attire, I've heard people say, well, I really don't care what other people think about me. We're saying here that, clothing can dictate how a person is perceived. And well, I don't care what people say, and if they have a problem with my outfit, they're just being judgmental. And if they're that type of people, then I don't care to be with them. Maybe you've heard or met people like that. But I can understand to a certain extent how, we don't want to worry about what people think. You can't control how people think. But I do think, though, when it comes to the issue of respect, we do have to put in a little more thought. For example, if you're going to go see a doctor, let's say you have a really, really serious operation and you really are trying to find the best surgeon in town to help you out. And this guy, the so-called best surgeon, shows up looking anything but clean. He is very messy looking, then I would have to wonder whether he's professional enough. Can my life, as I'm laying on the surgical table, can he really help me? That kind of an impression, And I think we want to give people more than anything a sense of encouragement, that you can trust me.
Yes.
Now, we're not trying to deceive people, obviously, and we're not trying to impress people, make them just go, ooh, we like you just based on what you're wearing. That would be shallow. But I think there is something to be said about, letting people know that I care enough about our encounter.
Yes.
That's why I wear, good clothes in front of you. Okay. Well, moving to the next column, we have an example of how dressing down has created problems for people. Now, what's that example, Brandon?
Well, it gives the example of Casual Friday. And all Casual Friday is just when people, dress down, basically. So maybe they wear a tie for men or a dress for ladies during the rest of the week. But on Friday, maybe they can wear jeans and a polo shirt or something like that. So that's Casual Friday. But it says that this has backfired in some offices where employees push the limits of good taste. And backfired there means that it's just the opposite of what they thought it would do. They thought by having Casual Friday, that this would, boost morale or help people enjoy work more, but actually people have taken it too far and they're dressing too casual.
Mm-hmm. And because of this, what does Ms. Smith have to say about that?
She said that it is time for some employers to reinforce the dress code. And dress code in this case means a certain set of rules for how you should dress.
Okay. And friends, what do you think? Do you agree with Ms. Tiffany Smith that one's clothing choice can affect how they're being treated at work? Well, we still have one more section to look over from today's article. Here's the second half of today's reading. We're on page 9, second column, Proper Etiquette Equals Confidence.
Proper etiquette equals confidence. Cynthia Merrill said that in her 20 years in the business, she has seen demand for etiquette training increase. This industry just continues to grow, and for good reason, Merrill said. There are lots of parents who are now realizing they didn't have anyone teach them proper etiquette, and they are now wishing it for their children. Merrill said that without parents and teachers providing etiquette instruction, employees aren't likely to absorb the necessary skills at work unless they have a good role model. Donna Schroyer, Director of Accounts for a medical billing company, hired Merrill to help her polish her professional skills. She said she learned many things, including thank you notes are important, and sandals are not proper work attire. She also learned how to handle introductions and was given pointers on dining etiquette. The whole experience has given me a lot more confidence, Schroyer said. I know now that what I am doing is the right thing, and that is a powerful feeling.
This is Advanced Radio. My name is Liz Archer. If you've just tuned in, I'm here with Brandon and Winnie discussing the Society article from the January 2009 issue of Advanced Magazine. The article is entitled The New Good Manners, and we're on page 9, second column, line 10. We begin this section with a comment made by Cynthia Merrill, and what did she say, Brandon?
Here Cynthia says that in her 20 years in the business, she has seen demand for etiquette training increase.
Okay, now I assume this business that she's talking about, that would be the etiquette training business. And in the next paragraph, Ms. Merrill's commented that the industry just continues to grow and for good reason. And what is this good reason?
Well, she also says that there are lots of parents who are now realizing they didn't have anyone to teach them proper etiquette, and they are now wishing it for their own children.
So this whole thing about receiving etiquette training is not just in the business world. It's not just about helping your businesses and your employees to, work better and be nicer to one another. It's even demanded by families, parents especially. Now, what do you guys think about this? Is this a good thing or
Well, I think it's a good thing because I think in today's world, so many things are informal. So we don't always learn these things at home. And especially, children growing up now are not learning these things at home. And so I think it's important, for them to get that training because when they go to the workplace later on in life, they're going to need to know these things.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And as we can see, Ms. Merrill does say that in the next paragraph, that without parents and teachers to provide etiquette instructions, without these usual people, these adults, to be there to help children learn about what's appropriate and what's not, things would be harder once these children grow up and become employees. It's going to be harder for them to absorb the necessary skills at work unless they have good role models. Now, what are role models, basically?
Well, a role model is someone you admire and whose behavior that you try to copy. So if you are a child, you may have the adults around you as your role model because you would tend to do and speak as they would.
Okay. And the next paragraph, we have another person mentioned here, Donna Schroyer. And she's somebody whom Miss Merrill has helped. Now, who is Donna Schroyer?
Donna Schroyer is the director of accounts for a medical billing company, and she was hired by Merrill to help her polish her professional skills.
Okay, and so what exactly has Schroyer learned from Merrill?
She's learned several things. She learned how to write thank you notes. She learned how sandals are not proper work attire. And she also learned how to handle introductions and was given pointers on dining etiquette. And pointers here means helpful advice.
Okay, now I can remember a time when I had to sit in school and learn about how to write a decent thank you letter.
Yes.
Right.
Did you ever do that? Okay, so... Yes. Okay, maybe that dates me, but I do remember that we had to learn how to write a thank you letter, and we did a rough draft, and eventually, we correct our mistakes, and eventually we rewrite them and put them on a pretty card and give them to somebody. So those were those days. Do people not do that anymore?
I think it's one of those things that you may know how to do, but to actually put it into practice may be a lot more difficult. Maybe you forget, you become busy, and these are the little things that it's easy to forget. And I think unless somebody reminds you, like an etiquette expert or someone like that, you don't realize the value of it or why it's important.
True. Okay, and then there's this whole thing about sandals being improper work attire. Did you guys know that? Have you heard of this before?
Yes. As a woman, yes.
Okay.
Definitely heard of that.
Right. And I think, if I wore sandals into work today, that may be a problem.
Right.
My sandals are more like flip-flops. So that could be a problem.
Beachwear.
Beachwear, yeah.
Yes. For some women's, when it comes to their work attire, and I think companies would ask that they not wear open-toe shoes.
Right.
In other words, don't wear shoes that allow people to see your toes. You need to have shoes that cover your toes. And then there are other companies that would ask that, your shoes be completely cover your feet.
Yes.
In other words, don't let the heel be exposed. Things like that. There are some companies that are very particular, and then there are some companies that are just glad that you don't show up barefoot. Okay, well, Ms. Schroyer has also learned how to handle introductions, and she was given pointers to dining etiquette, which we've talked about earlier. Handling introductions can be tricky for many people. It's natural to feel shy and not know how to, carry yourself, what to say when you're around strangers. And yet at the same time, you have to appear polite and accommodating. Certainly, you can hire somebody to help you learn about handling introductions. And when it comes to dining etiquette, what do you think she's going to be, learning? Just about the silverware, the drinking glasses?
Right, and probably also maybe learning, to wait to eat until everyone gets their food and those types of things too. Not just about the tedious things, but also more vague, more general principles as well. Right.
And then there's the whole thing of what do you do when you're done?
Right.
How do you set your silverware? Do you set them on the side? Do you put them on the plate?
Do you turn your fork over?
Yes, do you turn your fork over? Or do you cross your silverwares? Or do you put them, parallel side by side? Things like that. Right. And speaking of fork, then there's a whole thing of do you eat it the American style or the continental style?
Right.
And There are so many little rules, and it's no wonder that Schroyer would appreciate Merrill's pointers. Okay, well, listeners, we've covered 2 days' worth of material about good manners, and we've certainly covered a lot of vocabulary words. And it's time for us to do a quick review, and here's our feature.
Mr. Works, your 3 o'clock appointment is here.
I didn't know I had a 3 o'clock appointment, Miss Jones.
Oh, your wife made the appointment for you. Ms. Sasha Style from the Emily Post Institute.
What the?
Good afternoon, Mr. Steve Works. I'm Sasha Style, and what a pleasure it is for me to meet with the founder of the world's most successful computer company, Cherry Computers.
Well, Ms. Sasha Style, I'm a very busy man, and I have lots of things.
Oh, shush, Steve. Your wife sent me here to help you refine your social graces. I'm an etiquette expert, and we're going to make a gentleman out of you.
My social graces? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm a genius and a very wealthy man. I do what I want to do and say what's on my mind.
Yes, I know. Your wife told me. She called us after she became nauseated by your rude behavior at last month's shareholder meeting.
So I yelled at a couple shareholders. So what?
I know for a powerful man like you that sometimes the line is blurred between what's acceptable and what's not. So we're going to set some etiquette ground rules for you.
Okay. So I commit a faux pas once in a while. But as the president of...
Exactly. As the president of Cherry Computers, you need to be the role model for all the employees. So the Emily Post Institute is going to offer you some pointers on proper behavior.
Do we have to do this right now?
No. I just wanted to introduce myself today. How about tomorrow? Say, at 11 o'clock?
All right. Miss Sasha Style, tomorrow at 11 o'clock, and this better be worth my time.
Okay, we've certainly covered a lot of vocabulary words for the 2 days' worth of material. And before we close, we have one more statement that is mentioned by Schroyer, and I think it's a good concluding remark. What did she say?
Well, she says that the whole experience has given me a lot more confidence. And then she goes on to say, I know now that what I am doing is the right thing, and that is a powerful feeling.
Okay, so Schroyer certainly has felt like she's been helped. It's been a good experience for her. And listeners, do you ever worry about whether, you're doing the right thing or not? Have you ever found yourself in situations where it's just awkward and you just don't know what to do? Do you wonder, could there be anybody out there who can help me to, give me some pointers and so I don't make a fool of myself? Well, we still have one more day to go. We have another part to this society article. And good news, we have tips. So we hope you'll join us again tomorrow for some practical tips on social etiquette. Until then, this is Liz.
And Brandon.
And Winnie.
Saying goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.